Hello and welcome to Geek Chic, created for you because intelligent conversation never goes out of style. This is the home for business brain candy. On Geek Chic, we invite a subject matter experts in to give us their experience, their knowledge, and a very different view of a subject that could have really significant impact to your business. This podcast is brought to you from Sales Geek Essex in partnership with DMB Films, the home for professional podcast filming. Links to all of this will be in our About session. And welcome to Geek Chic, created for you because intelligent conversation never goes out of style. The home of business brain candy. This week's episode is a celebration of cerebral sweetness, and the subject matter is all about marketing and the marketing magnificence that I have in the studio today is these two wonderful gentlemen, Damon Langlois, I always get that wrong. Langlois, and Danny Nevill. So Damon is a printing and marketing specialist, and I love your tagline. You think it, we print it. You are far too humble, in my opinion, and the stuff that you impart and the stuff I learn from you is absolutely brilliant. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And the fabulously gorgeous Danny Nevill from Universal Group, who is a multi-award winning entrepreneur and founder of Universal Group. And I've put in here the digital marketing king. Do you like that?
Absolutely.
That's a good intro. So what we're going to be doing today, sales and marketing has always been a little bit of a them and us, right? It's always been either you're in marketing or in sales, and the twain should never meet. You know, it's about marketing bitches about sales, sales bitches about marketing. So what we've got here, I mean, you've got a sales and marketing background. You've got a marketing background. I'm sales, so we've kind of got the whole thing going on. So we're going to be exploring all of those things that people need to know, think about, feel about marketing and what it has. And we're going to start with marketing and branding. Marketing is branding, I guess. That for me as a salesperson, marketing is all about what it looks like, what it feels like, all the branding, all the pretty stuff, you know, all that soft stuff that you know, that salespeople don't kind of go, oh yeah, they're just doing the easy stuff. And then the hard stuff, which is taking it to market and all the rest of the stuff. We all know that those things need to be both together. So when it comes to marketing and branding, what are the biggest mistakes that businesses make in communicating their brand and identity? So I'm going to hand it over to you guys, whoever's going to leap in first.
Well, I'd say one of the biggest issues with businesses is a lack of brand consistency.
Okay.
Consistency in their message, their colour scheme, fonts, tonality, and who they're trying to target. Because there's two facets to that. One part is you could be under-presenting the business and underselling what you do, and at the same time you could, or the opposite would be alienating your customer base.
Right.
So, for example, if you sold a low-value product but presented everything in such a high, glossy manner, then you might be misaligning the message and what you're trying to communicate to what it is actually you sell and offer. And vice versa, if you're trying to sell a top-quality, high-pitched product or service at a high top value, then everything else needs to align to that. If you give someone, we're speaking about a low-quality business card and you're selling top-of-the-top service or product, then the customer's going to receive the business card and think, wait a second, this isn't aligning.
And it's that inconsistency, because you build trust with your customer base, with consistency, with, you know, it feeling right. I mean, we make decisions in our limbic brain, all right? This is our monkey brain that doesn't have any kind of communication systems or anything like that. And it's people will say, you know, why didn't you buy that car or that thing? Or, it just didn't feel right. Well, it's that feel, isn't it?
It is that feel. And I think the thing with it is that when people naturally are going to assess you and check you out, so when they meet you for the first time, their first assessment of you is how you look. But then also what you then give them. So if you give them as you say, a cheaper card, all of a sudden this tactile feel is like, well, it's not aligning. You know, they might look really great, but they've got a really bad business card. And then they're going to go online afterwards, and they're going to try and put the dots together. So they're going to look at you on LinkedIn. They're going to look at the website, and I think where companies do make a lot of mistakes is that they don't have that consistency across all the streams. So they'll get a business card. The business cards might be really nice, and they'll go to the website, and the website's awful.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
And the messaging might be different. So they might have a strap line on the business card that doesn't align with the strap line on the website or anything else that they're putting out there. So for me, a lot of it is about actually looking at all the touch points for your client base.
Yes.
And making sure that they all line and are consistent and look right. Look how you want them to look in relation to where your brand is.
It's that customer journey thing, those touch points, that customer centricity, you know, is people kind of have this thing, they get carried away with their business and their offering and they're this and they're that, and it's all about them, when actually it's not at all. It's about how other people experience who you are, what you do, and how you communicate. It's a communications, right? Marketing's communications.
Well, there's two takeaways that business owners can take away from this discussion here today. One of them is brand guidelines. So we're speaking earlier about a business could have a simple one-page brand guideline. What is the font? What's the colour scheme? What colour palette are we using?
Yeah.
How should the logo be used and formats of that logo, etc. So then every single provider or company that works with that business has a clear instruction as to what the brand guidelines are. What ties into that as well is knowing your customer avatar, who are your customers, so then that aligns and matches with your brand guidelines. So there are two takeaways I'd give anyone watching here today or listening.
So I experience quite a lot where people have spent time and effort creating a brand, they've got brand assets, and then when you ask them for them, they don't actually know where they are.
Do you know what I find? Like it's when you go into, and with big brands, they have big marketing teams, right? We all work with SMEs. Yeah, we all work with the smaller entities, not the people who've got massive budgets, who've got teams of people who decide what colour yellow, what colour green, and all the rest of the stuff. But fundamentally, to be able to rise up or compete or grow, or to compete for those customers, whether you're a small business, whether you're a disruptor, whether you're all of those things, you have to get those things right. But out of what sort of percentage do you think, when you talk to customers, actually have even an idea of what the brand guidelines should look like?
In my experience, very few companies actually have brand guidelines, and I think the reason for that is they think brand guideline is an expense. It's an expensive thing to create and process, and it's going to cost them money, and they don't need it yet.
Right. So when they save money, see, this is the problem. They're going. What they're seeing is their money going out. They're not seeing the return on investment or the loss, because you never see the loss because you never had it, right? But you're going to be losing customers.
And I think also it's that process of assessing and analysing. So if you haven't got anything in the first place, you can never review it.
Yes, that's true.
So you can't review whether your logo or brand is working if you don't actually understand what your logo and brand is, or what it should look like. And therefore, then in the future, you won't be able to go, well, we need to change it.
Yes.
And so I suppose a lot of the conversations we have are about future-proofing stuff. And I'm not necessarily talking about you having to spend thousands and thousands of pounds up front on getting this stuff. But if you've got a plan or an idea of what the end goal or where you want to be in the future, then you can just work towards that and do it in little snippets.
And there was a case in point that we spoke about pre-discussion, essentially about a client of ours who were very proud to show me their fancy new pen they've just ordered 1,000 of. And they said, what do you think to the pen? And I've looked at the pen, felt the pen, used it, and thought, great pen. However, wish you spoke to me before ordering those pens and the salesperson convinced you to have this big 1,000 order of pens, because they are not in brand at all. So the business's branding is black, yellow with an accent of red.
I see.
The pens ordered were blue and gold. So whilst it has their name on there and the pens do look good, completely misalignment to the brand. So anyone receiving that, be supplier, customer, prospect, etc., it's just no matching up. So when they go from offline to online, they go like, is this the right company?
So there's a really interesting, so we see colour and movement before we see words and all the rest of the stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
So, and because branding is one of those ways that we can imprint who we are on other people's brains, right? On other people's memories. So when you think, it's like that thing, it's like, oh, when you're looking for something and you go, oh yeah, well it was red. And then you go round and you look at everything, you'll only look for red, you'll only look for that colour. But the second you pick it up and you find out, oh, actually it was blue, and you have missed it 17 million times because you were looking for red. And this is the same thing that happens in our brains, right?
And also, I mean, as humans, we're very good at patterns, putting patterns together.
Yes.
So I see branding as is just a pattern. And you're adding to that pattern all the time, and that pattern needs to continue for people to recognise it more easily and remember it. So if your patterns are all over the place,
they can't remember it.
They're not going to know who you are.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose the ultimate really is when you have a sale pitch or presentation, you're trying to make and get your prospective customer to feel a certain way.
Yes.
So the ultimate in marketing and advertising is how do you get your prospective customers to feel the way they need to be feeling in order to purchase.
So let's go back to that feeling thing, right? Going back to the limbic system.
Yeah.
Because, and I always say to everybody, you're not going to remember what I say when I do my training, when I do my rants to camera, when I do all of these sort of things. You are not, when I meet people networking, you're not going to remember what I say, but you are going to remember how I made you feel at that point. And it's the emotive part of our decision-making process, because where our decision-making processes are in our limbic system, also our emotional centres. Our communication isn't there, but our emotional centres are there. So invoking that emotion, getting people to feel a certain way, that pride in I picked this brand, the alignment of, I constantly wearing super dry t-shirts. Well, because they're high quality, I like the brand, it's just one of those things. I align with good quality, but at a reasonable price. It's like what we always want, right? So, and it's that emotional feel. It's how do we want our customers to feel? So how do you kind of get your customers to understand, about how to communicate their brand to their target audience?
So I think a lot of it starts earlier than that. So in the relationship with clients, it's mostly about trust.
Yes.
So as soon as someone trusts someone, they will start listening.
Yeah.
When they don't trust them, they won't listen at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, it goes much further back than the branding and all that. All that does is aid that quicker route to trust and credibility. So branding really is just is a vehicle to make that client or help that client trust you quicker, I think. But you've got to do everything you do has got to reinforce that.
Yes,
so,
I agree.
Because trust can very quickly be broken.
Much easier. It's much easier to break a trust than to build a trust, right?
It goes deeper than the brand itself, because your personnel and everything have all got to perform in a certain way to continue that trust from being broken. But for us, a lot of the conversations is about how well do you know your clients, and I mean it's different if you're going for a client you don't know, then you can only know so much about them.
Yes.
But for us, the marketing process starts actually with the clients you do know.
Yeah.
Because it's an easier route to sale with a client you've already got because they know you than it is to getting a completely new client altogether. It's
5 times. We were saying this in the previous podcast. It's 5 times more energy and effort that's put into getting a new customer than selling to an old customer.
And we do all have to sell to new customers.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that's we should discard that. But I think if you're looking to increase revenue or improve performance or whatever, the first place probably to look is your existing client base.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And for 2 reasons. One, there's a potential uplift in terms of what you can do with your clients in terms of services and products, but also from a feedback point of view, how are we doing?
Yeah.
Are we making all the right noises? Are we ticking all the right boxes? Is there anything we can improve? That is a really key thing. And if you've got a good relationship with your client, they will be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely. Go on.
Well, a lot of businesses do shy away from asking for feedback or collecting customer
Massively.
feedback. However, you can flip that completely on its head and look at it as a great sales opportunity.
Huge.
Because questions are the answers, and when you speak to an existing customer and ask them important questions about their marketing, their advertising, their branding, etc., they may be actually, with the right questioning and the right engineering to those conversations, you can reveal some of their pain points. And where there's pain, there's opportunity to then sell a solution. Yeah. So if you spin it completely round, it's a great way to unlock and uncover where those businesses may need help and support.
Yeah, definitely, because people will buy one thing and then that gives you an opportunity to speak about more. You know, it's like that is where their current need is, but that doesn't mean that that's a universal need. You know, and there's two things, the two universal truths that come through our sales training is that nobody cares about you unless you're in a relationship with them. Like, they just don't. And so many businesses, I think we spoke about this in the previous podcast, is around, you know, most businesses these days consider themselves to be relationship style businesses, and that relationship needs upkeep.
Yes.
It needs to be built properly, it needs to be kept up. You know full well that there's safety in a relationship because they're not like, it's harder to break. But actually being able to keep it is like, you know, it being able to keep it takes work, and people simply don't put the work into the relationship. So it doesn't work.
I agree. I don't think they do, and I think that's where you get a problem down the line. If you haven't got a really open and honest relationship with your customer, then they're not going to tell you the whole truths all the time. So, you know, in my experience in the print industry, a lot of the times you will lose a client and you don't know why.
Yes.
Now, I will always take the blame for that, because that's our fault for not asking them enough questions and stuff like that. But we can get so comfortable in how we are with a relationship that actually we don't keep asking them challenging questions.
Yeah, it's almost like you get blind to it. It's so, like, or you can't answer. I can't ask those questions now because you don't know them too. You know those. It's too late now. You know those people that I've known people for years and years and years, but I don't really know their name for whatever reason. But you can't ask them anymore, so you have to wait for somebody else to introduce them rather than do it themselves. Yeah.
Well, Tesco's gave really good analysis several years ago in that they said, based on data and people's spending and shopping habits, they could pretty much predict when a relationship is ending or starting.
Really?
Based on their purchasing habits. And something we have at Universal is, on one of our mantras is, you should know if a relationship's in decline before it gets to an end point. Because you should be aware of, okay, this relationship's got this issue, where are we needing to invest that time and energy before that ever gets to that stage. So that's very important, obviously tying in.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we teach is audit selling. So you go back into people that you've lost and say, look, where did we go wrong? We want to learn, we want to grow. You know, or people that are kind of, you know, doing that real proper qualitative account management, you know, saying...
But on that note of qualitative account management is knowing who to invest that time and money into.
Oh, absolutely.
Because unless you've graded your clients or got a VIP client base, then you don't know necessarily who should be having that invested time and energy above maybe some of the other customers. Because you could spend all of your time on a slow paying, highly demanding, never going to order much more customer.
Yeah.
Where your customer who spends a lot of money with you
it's nice
on a frequent basis, easygoing, refers you to lots of people, and they could easily be forgotten. So we have at Universal a VIP account manager.
I want to know where I'm sitting in that one. Is you trouble?
You're not quite there yet.
I need to work harder.
Yeah.
So that's a really controversial. That's that's quite a controversial, edgy kind of view. Is grading your customers. Yes. You know, because we want to service them, but there are good customers and bad customers. Yeah. Customers that value you, which actually is probably your fault. Could be a little bit of their fault. It could be that there's a mismatch in values. But what do you feel about grading your customers?
It sounds really harsh.
It does. It sounds a little bit,
at the end of the day,
it's not really.
My take on it is, we're running businesses.
Yeah.
We are doing this a long time of our lives. And so in my early career, I had a lot of experience with not so good clients. And there was no need for them to be the way they were, but they just were. So actually, when I set Greenlight up, I made a really conscious decision that I was going to pick and choose my clients very carefully, because I've got to deal with them every day. And then I've got to go home to my family and be in a good mood, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I think grading is probably a harsh way of putting it, but I think you have to assess your clients and work out which clients are best for you, knowing your own personality, your own business, and then trying to get more of them clients.
I was about to say, you beat me to the punch, is literally, once you've done that, you then know who your best clients are, and there's often a lot of similarities.
Yes,
which
birds of a feather.
Which then helps you attract and reach out to more customers like that.
Yeah, because understanding and knowing your target audience is all around really understanding who you don't have to sell to everybody. You just have to sell to the people who believe what you believe, your tribe, your values, and that's where you align. And that brand alliance, that's where it all starts, right? Is really understanding.
And it comes
customer.
back to performance as well. So, I used to run a customer service department, and the customers that got the best service were the ones that the customer service executives liked.
Yeah,
and who liked them.
Yeah.
So, and that's human nature. The people you like the best, you probably put yourself out for a bit more. So if you have got clients that there's not that sort of synergy going on in terms of the relationship, I think it's really important to have a look at that client and say, well, are they actually for us? There's a massive fear about divorcing or firing a client.
Yeah.
And I absolutely get that. And when you're starting a business, that's really difficult.
Yeah.
But actually, it's probably the best thing you could ever do.
Yes.
Because apart from anything, it gives you a boost. It's really empowering to actually go, we're not a fit. But I'm not saying you should never have bad clients, because you learn a lot from that experience, because you learn about what you do want rather than what you don't. But if a client isn't working for you or working with you in the way you want, you need to have a really honest conversation with them about where that's going and whether there's going to be any change. If there's not, you probably want to move away, because what tends to happen is you invest so much time and energy into that, trying to make that relationship work, and then you're neglecting all your other relationships, and it's costing you money, and there are clients out there that you could fill that gap with who will be much more profitable for your company.
And that type of client, the last thing you want is them to refer you to one of their friends.
So as marketeers, how do you advise your customers on who their target market is? Because that's all part of the beginning, the brand thing. Yes, the pretty things, we want to look like this, we like this colour, we do all of that sort of stuff. But really it's about talking to the audience. So how do you support your customers in identifying who their customer base is?
Yeah. After you.
I was going to say, so from a lot of mine comes from stories of my own experience.
Okay.
So we'll be having a conversation with the client about what they're trying to do. And I think it goes back to a little bit further earlier than that in the conversation about actually where do they want to get to? What's the sort of end goal, whether that's in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Because that
starts to sound like me, Damon.
Yeah. Well, that's what influences the decisions you make now. So if you don't really have a good understanding of where you're trying to get to, how can you make decisions now on a journey that you don't know what the end is? Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's probably a really key thing is talking about where do you want to get to, what type of business do you want to be. Then it's then looking at what sort of clients you would need for that to happen.
Yeah.
But it all really fundamentally comes down to clear, honest, concise communication.
Yeah.
Marketing's communication, right?
And off the back of that, I would say what you just described there is very consultative selling.
Yes, I agree.
And in order to be deemed an expert in something, typically they say 10 years in that sphere, or the equivalent hours invested. So I know myself, we've been in this for many years, way beyond 10, which enables us to give customers the right guidance, advice, and insights that we've experienced, not just over seeing what customers do, but also market conditions, changes in Parliament.
We've all been through a lot, right?
Well, I think, I can't speak for everyone else in the room, but I've made a lot of mistakes in my career.
And that's where we get our wisdom, right? It's not about the successes. It's never about the stuff we've done right. It's always when we've done something, fallen flat on our face, smashed our face on the pavement, got blood everywhere, and at that point you change behaviour.
Yourself off. But also, I think there needs to be a sort of review of what happened and why it happened.
Yes.
And what you can change. Because if you don't change anything, you're just going to keep making the same mistakes again and again and again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be really difficult to have that really honest, self-facing conversation with yourself about, well, actually, it was me and I did this wrong, or I didn't do this very well, or I denied that was a thing.
Yeah, but that's where peer mentoring and having an outside voice, I mean, certainly from our point of view, we give like half an hour just as a reflection piece, just to hold space in finding out where they're going, what they're doing, some time to stop and think about it and reflect and go, this isn't going well, that's going well, but actually we never really, especially as small SMEs, small to medium sized industries, pretty much everybody in there is running at 150% of capacity. We're all doing far too many things, running around doing too many stuff, wearing lots of different hats, and taking the time out to speak to a marketeer, whether it be through print, whether it be through digital media, websites, all the rest of the stuff, is hugely powerful and valuable space, right?
It is absolutely valuable space. And I think also sometimes there can be this feeling, well, they're a competitor, or, and people don't speak to them necessarily always in the same industry as them.
You absolutely should.
Absolutely should. And, a lot of our clients are in the same industry as us, because they offer something different than us and we offer something different to them. But when you put them together, it becomes a very, very strong thing. We
often have very easy conversations with people in our sector. My approach is that there's 6 million small businesses in the UK. There's plenty for us all to have ourselves and share. So having that good relationship with competitors is always healthy, because you can obviously help each other, support one another, and the amount you learn as well. But also, what we spoke about earlier, avoid really bad clients. So in the digital marketing space, we are working more collaboratively and sort of trying to stop bad clients being working with us. So that's something very, very valuable, what we're doing.
It is, and I guess there are all kinds of kind of reference materials around, finances, red flag, all of that sort of stuff that you can check up on it. But it is that whole thing about competitors, knowing and understanding competitors and how you differentiate yourself, which goes in very nicely into our second subject, which I've put down here. And this is around branding and differentiation. So I'm particularly interested, and I am a little bit evangelical about the USP unicorn, because everybody goes, you need to know what your USP is. When in actual fact, I believe, and I'm happy to be controversial, that I don't believe USPs are very common at all. They are literally like unicorns. Yeah, I just don't believe it. And when I have conversations with people out in the field, when I'm networking, when I'm speaking to clients, and I say, well, what is it? What's your USP? And they usually go, we do this and we do that and we do the other. And I say, that's really interesting. Are you telling me that your competitors don't do those things? Oh, yeah, they do those things. I was like, okay, so what's different about you? And they say, usually goes to, we're great customer service. And I'm like, okay.
No, that's not a USP.
No, it's not a USP. And then when it comes down to it, you go, okay, so what makes you different? What's the differentiators? How do you tackle those conversations? And what's your view?
We have a process. We use a whiteboard. It's very old school.
Love a whiteboard.
We set a few people in a room, key drivers within that business, and then we just ask questions, and then we write it on the whiteboard and let them stare at it. Their answers.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the that process of just discussing stuff brings so much more out into the open. So we found with a lot of our clients they haven't got a USP.
No.
There are 100 companies doing exactly the same thing as them, probably as well as them, and probably some of them quite nearby. So that makes it a completely different conversation about how you market that business. Rather than, I mean, there are companies that have got USPs, and they are really lucky if they've got them, and so you can push that out there. But I'm not really massively interested in what the USP is. I think there's a lot more fundamental things you've got to get right first before you can start shouting about.
Do you think so? I'm going to push back on that, because I think that, and I think the USP, the unique stuff that people do, is usually on like a sideline. And when I speak to customers, they go, "Oh yeah, we also do this," and you just you look at it and you go, "Wow, that's a brilliant product," and that's completely different. And
well, maybe that's because that's a side product, or it's a new product, and it's not really the core of their business. So, over the last 20 years, I think a lot of businesses have had to diversify their service and product range. And so they're trying stuff out. Yeah. But I think that coming back to the conversation, the interesting thing about it is that you find out things about them and their business journey that are absolutely amazing.
Absolutely. And that so, they undervalue, right?
Exactly, yeah. So when I was in sales, I'd be seeing clients in a small industrial estate in the middle of nowhere. No one had ever heard of it, and then you start talking about who they're working with, and they're working with some of the biggest companies in the world, and they don't even tell anyone. Yeah. And they don't even talk about it, and they don't even show it as something that should be. And you're like, what? That's really amazing. They're like, is it?
Is it? Yeah, they just came to us and asked for some stuff.
Yeah, and we did it.
We did it.
And we've had them for 25 years.
You got 25 years with a single customer. It's like these things are the brands, right?
They are gold.
Yes, those case study gold. Danny.
Yeah, well, I was literally on that note. There's someone else I know in business who has LSC as part of their acronym, which is a long-standing customer. So anyone who's been with the business for over 10 years falls into that category. So we're very close to that point ourselves. Been with them for 9 years, so I'm looking forward to what happens at year 10.
What are you going to do? And there's all of these long-standing customers going, Danny, we've put up with you for 10 years. What are you going to do? I want a big party. Yeah. I want a cake. I want balloons. what are you like? They're huge milestones.
Yeah, exactly.
Being in business
anniversary
for 10
milestone.
years. Yeah. Being in business 3 years. I mean, what was it? Well, I can't remember the percentage of businesses that don't even get to year 3.
Yeah. It's about 90%, isn't it?
Is it about 90%? I know it's really high.
Most fail in the first 18 months. Yeah.
Which is bonkers, right? And the reason why they fail, in my point of view, is they can't take what they have to market. And the reason why they can't take it to market is because they don't understand who they are and who they're selling to and all of that. And if you don't do that, you can't get your brand right. If you can't get your brand right, you can't get your marketing right. If you can't get your marketing right, you can't get your sales right.
A lot of it comes, so this comes from personal experience in a company that I had that failed, and it didn't fail in terms of that we lost loads of money, but it didn't really make any money. It just sort of teared along for a while. And had I known, I learned loads from the process. But what it came down to was inappropriate investment. So I didn't have enough capital to be able to put that company to market in the appropriate way for the industry that it was in.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's really interesting.
When you're speaking, Lisa, literally ties in perfectly. I was about to say most businesses or people who go into business often treat marketing and advertising as a sprint rather than a marathon. Yeah. And if obviously you look at your other business, it's been around for many years. And that's a marathon. Yeah. Whereas people often go in saying, right, I'll give it 3 or 4 months or 6 months or 8 weeks or 90 days.
I've got this much money to tide me over. I'll try it for 6 months. Yeah.
And where does that come from? Yeah. Because you can't build a brand, a culture, loyal customers within 90 days. No. It's simply not enough time. So whilst it might work at trying to get a 6-pack, when it comes to growing a business, it's completely the wrong approach. And I think at least 2 years is more realistic to actually measure whether that business is going to have longevity or not.
So how do you start speaking to your customers about what their brand might look and feel like, and longevity and things like that?
That's probably quite a difficult question to answer in so much as it depends who you're talking to. So if you're someone that right at the start of their journey, the conversation is going to be completely different from a 10-year-old company that has suddenly lost their way. or has plateaued, or is declining in sales.
Yeah. And also who your customer is.
Yeah.
Because just say you're selling a certain experience to a certain age group, etc. But you said to me, what's my favourite colour scheme? What's my favourite fonts?
Yeah, because it all works. They all work on their own personal preference rather than the market preference.
Yes. Whereas,
so how do you test that out? What would you be your advice for people who want to understand how to do that?
So a lot of it would be around what's currently out there.
Okay.
So we'll analyse and review the industry or the marketplace that's in place currently and see what other people are doing.
And do you get them to, so people, there's a whole thing that everybody went blue. Blue was reliable, with this, that, there. And now everybody's going, oh, no, everybody thinks black and yellow. I mean, our branding is black and yellow, for goodness sake. I'm seeing a lot of that, or purples, which you would never see, or purples and turquoises. Yes.
I mean, I've been in the print industry a long time, and it goes in cycles. And so the things that tend to change is logos become more complex, logos become more simple. Logos become more complex, logos become more simple. Logos become more complex. And
it goes like that, yeah.
It does go like that. But I think nowadays you're seeing more sophisticated simplicity is becoming the sort of buzz for...
Sophisticated simplicity?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Explain that one. That sounds like a complete oxymoron.
So what it means is that you are creating something that looks quite simple, but in terms of the whole process, it's actually a lot more sophisticated than it outwardly looks. So a lot of people's marketing strategies are... So if you look at some of the big brands, some of them have got very, very simple logos.
Yeah.
But they tweak them a little bit here and there, or they'll tweak the messaging a little bit. And that's where the sophistication comes in, because that's not just done on a whim.
Yeah.
It's done because they've done loads of analysis and research, and they know that something's changed in terms of how we buy, what people are thinking about, whether people have got money or not.
People make big mistakes, right? New Coke, things like that, changing branding and then going, oh, hang on, that was wrong. Yes, Danny, sorry.
And that also goes back to how a brand evolves, because if you look at, say, the Nike logo, it's a simple tick. But that used to have the wording Nike, because you wouldn't know what the tick was previously. And if you look at like colour schemes, pre-recession 2007, 2008, there was lots of colours used, and then austerity comes in, we go black, white, greys. Because you're not going to be loud and lavish if you're not in a flamboyant sort of personality, persona or wealth.
That's really interesting. Go on.
So talking about branding, so we've been working with some clients recently, and it's also about a lot of what we talk about is the future proofing of your business, and it doesn't have to be expensive in terms of what you do now, but it's just thinking about how that brand might transition as it gets. I mean, rarely when my business what I actually wrote the business plan and my thought of what the business was going to be when I started it is nothing like it is now.
Yeah.
So you have to have some fluidity in terms of your thing, but also think about what things can happen. So when we're creating brands for people now, it's not just necessarily about having one colour. It may be that you have a primary sort of colours, but then there's having secondary stuff that you don't actually show any people. You just keep them in your back pocket, because at some point in the future they might become a thing.
Yeah.
And also if you group and you have multiple facets to your business and all that, then colours are a very simple way to define
different product ranges,
different service ranges, different stuff like that. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, but you're almost doing that from day one, because actually at that point it's not as expensive to do.
Okay, talk to me about that.
Well, so what? I mean, if you've got a really established company that's been in the marketplace for a long time, there is a feeling that they need to buy at a certain level in terms of the supplier bases they'll go to, which in some respects is true, but in other respects isn't. So they will, in most cases, pay more later down the line to do something that they could have done earlier on and pay less for. Does that make sense?
Is that because they're buying at premium, or people are they're buying at a certain level? SMEs, we try and keep ourselves very competitive. Yeah. We've got lower overheads. We've got, we're able to offer services that people with larger organisations, bigger resources, bigger overheads just simply can't compete with, which is, you would have thought that the SMEs would be smashing it out the park. and yet you've got this consistency and brand awareness and brand alliance, and people don't like to change. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, obviously, to your original question about the USP side, is that, like we've discussed, it's very hard to come up with a truly unique proposition there. However, what I've seen evolve is much more of a benefits list. So it's a collection of unique benefits, or a collection of features and benefits to being part of that brand, rather than just being, we're open 24/7, or we are 10-year guarantee. It's we are 24/7 and 10-year guarantee and this and that. Yeah. So it's a benefits list which you can then go place card against a competitor and say, look, we're these 10 amazing things. There are only 3 of them. Look what you're losing out and missing out on.
That's a great tip. I love that, having that benefits list, because actually what we do, you know, so many people are talking about their features, right? And we do loads of training against features and benefits. And it's like, look, a feature is completely pointless without it being linked to a core benefit in the eyes of your customers.
Exactly.
And it's their benefits, and you can always predict what the features are, but you can never predict what the benefit or the benefits that's seen and valued by the customers. So I think that's having a benefits list. I think that's a great
we work on
way to work on a brand, right?
Yeah, something slightly similar, but slightly. So we work on a givens list.
A givens?
A givens.
I was going to say not givens,
no,
not like
givens.
funky
no,
given. No, I'm showing my age.
as a consumer, buying from a company, what do I expect them to do as a bare minimum? So they're givens.
Yeah. Yeah,
givens. So if you looked at all, companies within that industry sector, you'd expect all of them to do a certain thing.
Yes.
Or a certain amount of things, for example. So they're your givens. Then there's the value addeds. Mm-hmm. And so what do we do that some of our suppliers don't? So that's, that extra benefit thing over thing. And then there's the gold USP nugget, if there is one.
If there is one, yeah.
And so we sort of work through that, because I think a lot of that process is dispelling what people think a USP is.
Yes, I agree.
So customer service is not a USP.
No.
Delivering on time is not a USP.
No, it's given.
Free quotes is not a USP. Do you know what I mean? So there's loads of things that people go, well, yeah, we do this, we do. Great, you should do that anyway.
Yeah.
You should always give amazing customer service.
I'm totally taking that givens thing.
Yeah.
Givens against value and benefits.
Yeah.
I think that is an absolute gem.
Yeah. And then it comes down to communicating that you are this. I think a brand that did this incredibly well, and I actually thought they was very daring in doing it, almost, whether it was legal or not, it sort of really rode on that point. And that was Audi, when they really hit Tesco's with, you can find this in Tesco for this, in Audi for this. And it was so aggressive in what they did, but look at the market.
Yeah.
Look how they've grabbed that share.
I agree.
In fact, they're actually now doing it the other way around.
Yeah, Tesco's are doing it back to them.
Several years later.
Tesco's
well done, Tesco's.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really fascinating. What a brilliant stories, like those disruptors in the market.
Exactly.
And now the main top brands are fighting and using disruptor kind of strategy. And the same is happening in things like banking, insurance, all of these disruptive, because we're consuming goods digitally. We're consuming goods in a very, very different way than we did 3 years ago, pre-COVID, right? So now what's happening is all of those disruptors, all of those people that are coming in, taking chunks and out of the established brands, out of the people who were kind of, the top, the top FTSE 500 or whatever it was. And now they're using the disruptors because they're losing market share.
Yeah.
Like massively losing market share.
And there's a great example of the new Lidl app. I don't know if have you seen that at all?
No, I have. I use it. I've got it on my phone. It goes beep.
Right. So I've seen lots of people using it, and they have the simple football game on there where
I haven't seen that bit.
You kind of almost always win. So,
oh really?
But you pick up a free bag of bananas or whatever, something low value, and it comes back to how much you're willing to spend to buy your next customer. Because if you're willing to spend 50p to get them back in your store, that's a very cheap way of getting them back in to spend £100.
Definitely. And that's like, what's the cost of a customer? I mean, surely when you're thinking about marketing and your brand, understanding, and this is one thing when I ask all of the time, all of the clients we go in, what's the average value of your customers, because you can then decide what the investment piece is. The same must be true for you guys as well.
It's absolutely true, and I think again, it comes very early on in the conversation about
it should do
what you should budget for certain activities, because as you say, if your average order value is £15, you can't then go and spend £100 per client. Trying to get them to spend more, because it's going to take you 3 or 4 orders to get your money back. So, there's definitely a balance in terms of what you do, but that's where the conversation bit comes in. It's being honest about us and the client about where they actually stand.
And a lot of businesses, particularly small companies, do not understand or know how much their average customer's worth.
Which is insanity, right? That is one of the absolute primary measures. Even if you've been in business 6 months, you should fundamentally know and understand what the spend value is for your clients, right?
And there's 2 takeaways I can give to people off the back of this today on how to work out this. One is mathematically, average spend per transaction times frequency times longevity. So it could be months, years, and multiple years to get an average value of that customer. Another easy one is to divide your turnover by the number of customers you've got.
Yeah.
Because loads of businesses don't know how much their customer's worth. They're 2 quick and easy ways to roughly get to that point.
I love that.
But that's a really key thing in terms of identifying decline.
Yes, because when you can identify the average,
if you look at your
down,
top 100 customers on a weekly or monthly basis and assess where they are up and down in the table, you can suddenly start to see that if someone was at number 1 and then 3 months later they're at number 25, what's changed?
Yeah, and it's about those measures. I mean, it's amazing to me that when I look across podcasts and I have these conversations with different silos, different disciplines within businesses, how many of those conversations are exactly the same? It's like, what are you measuring? What are you looking at?
Well, this goes back to what we see a lot with smaller businesses is the lack of understanding of average customer value.
Yeah.
Which is when they look at marketing advertising, they come under the quote of they know the cost of everything, the value of nothing.
Amen to that.
The actual cost of losing a customer versus the spend of getting that customer is really not understood. So when we talked about business cards, would you spend 40p a card because your customer's worth £100, or would you skimp on a 20p business card and then lose the £100?
Yeah.
Surely it's a no-brainer.
One tip I would give people, there's loads of online free tools for doing this, but it's time tracking. Like really simply time tracking. So when you're talking to a client on the phone, time tracking. Right? When you're doing some work for a client or you're thinking about something that they need to do, time tracking. And it's literally just you push a button, turn the button off. And then assess how much time you are spending on them against how much they're actually spending with you.
Yes.
So a lot of companies may find that their top 10 customers may spend a lot of money with them, but they are spending an inordinate amount of time servicing them customers. Yeah. So actually they're not that profitable.
And if you ever want to learn how to do that incredibly effectively, just look at a law firm.
Law firms, now they're the one that makes money.
That's absolutely true. But I'm not saying that should be like a costed thing where you say, well, I'm going to time track you and I'm going to charge you for the amount of time I spend you. It's for your own personal analysis to see where your clients, and it's really important, I think, when you're starting a business, to understand the amount of time and effort you're putting in against a client against how much they're spending.
Yeah.
And also, I think you've got to. This comes back to the like and personality thing. So if you really like someone, you're always going to put a bit more effort into them, but that may not always be relative to the amount of money they're paying you, or whether they're going to be profitable or not. So it's a difficult conversation to have with yourself again. But it's just really, if you understand where you are and what you're doing, then you can then assess whether that's the right client for you, whether you want more of them, whether you're spending too much time on them. And we talked the other week about pricing.
Yeah, pricing.
And whether you have there's a whole other podcast
on its own, right?
But it gives you vehicles to have another communication with your client.
Yes, absolutely. It's that time again. It's time for the prices to go up because we all have to do that, and I think that shies away. Pricing is one of the core staples in the conversations that we have with our clients. And knowing and understanding how much your customer is willing to pay.
Well, we've spoke before about contracts and
Yes.
so forth, and there's actually a lot of benefit to having a contract as well as not being necessarily in one. So, for example, if you were in a longer term contract, you've got potentially fixed overhead for a mass amount of time. If I give an example, do you want to have a 1-year lease on a building that you're going to open a coffee shop in, or a 20-year lease? Well, obviously, if it goes terribly wrong, the 1 year. However, you're obviously taking that venture with the hope of it being successful. We can have like break clauses in there. So you want the 20-year lease, because if that's incredibly successful,
you don't want to be kicked out.
You've now just lost your golden nugget.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is a lot of benefits of being in a longer term agreement as well.
And this comes back nicely to just making sure that you've got the right capital.
Yes,
to
the
run
investment.
your business.
Yeah.
Because if you know you're going to run out of business in 6 months, then that's going to be a real challenge. Particularly if you're a new start with no customer base. I mean, you're going to find it very difficult to keep going.
So how do you spread? Because we need to have a consistent view, and there are so much information, so many different platforms, online, offline, all of that sort of stuff. How do you decide, how do you build a strategy that's on multi-levels and multiple platforms as a marketeer?
Go on, Newsom.
So, as I spoke about earlier, social media is a very important area and space to be in, because it's proven again and again and increasingly that if you're not on social media, people will have a red flag as to why aren't they on there? Why aren't they public? Who are they? Why are they hiding who they are, what their business does by not being on these platforms?
Yeah.
So you've got to think when you're selling, not just about the benefits, but also the hurdles and objections that a customer's going to have before they transact with you. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not addressing those potential objections, then they're going to fear what's behind that door that I don't know about. Whereas you want to open up and say what's behind each door and make them very aware of the pros and cons of everything going on. We've discussed that multiple
definitely.
times.
It's about quietening that inner narrative.
Yes.
That's but what's in it? What's the catch? What's going on? Where's who they are? And I always teach everybody tell people, be very, very open about the reasons why you're doing something.
I think for us, we sort of, it comes again a lot to this front end piece and front end work that we do with a lot of our clients, and it's about finding out what their resources, what their capability is, what their capital arrangement is, how much money have they got to actually invest in this. And all clients are different, so there's no one size fits all in terms of a marketing strategy. And again, it comes back to a lot of doing quite a lot of research around what competitors are doing, what works for them, what's different, what could you do that they're not doing, what are you doing that probably is not worth doing because everyone's doing it.
So what would be your top tips on creating a strategy? I mean, it's got to be
end goal,
or is it where your customers are? What does it look like?
Well, when people do activities like we spoke about earlier, they often give them a time frame that is completely unrealistic. So I say about the 1 month, we spoke about 1 month, 3 month time periods. Where did they get that time frame from? Because most strategies, as I've seen over many years, do work. It's just getting the ingredients of your strategy with what you sell correct with the audience you're selling to. And that can take time. That could be you hit it, ingredients are perfect, boom, it's selling like hotcakes. Or it could be that activity you're doing, whether it be pay-per-click, SEO, social media marketing, hasn't quite clicked or grown yet. So someone could see one brand getting all these leads and inquiries from social media and their business not. They've been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, they've got all of that.
They've got all their audience and following all sorted, everything's in place. You've just come to the game.
And then you're expecting to do what they're doing when you're literally a newcomer, and there's all that SEO kind of stuff that goes in that brand, the positive backlinks and all of that brand kind of recognition, what Google does, it likes people that have been there for a period of time. And
well, Mark Zuckerberg said a really great quote which should be remembered amongst business people, particularly when they go online, and that is he said it took him 4 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah, absolutely, because it never is, right? No. It's about hard graft, putting the miles in.
And you have businesses out there saying, well, I'll give it 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, it's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Is that about not believing in themselves though? Is that about I'm gonna try, or I'm gonna dip my toe in the water but not fully committing to it?
So it's an element of that, but I also think it's the fact that people don't fully understand the time parameters of certain activities, which is, it's not their fault, but it's just you've got to. So it's a lot of it's about partnering with trust. So you've got to have someone that's going to advise you for the benefit of you. Yes. And so if you find that partner, then when they tell you stuff, it's most likely going to be true and in your best interest. So, listen to that and then understand what it's going to cost you. So we particularly with the marketing side, it's not, there's no, if you're only going to spend 150 quid for 3 months, don't bother.
Yeah.
Honestly, would be our answer to them, because you are not going to get anything from it. You might as well put that 450 quid somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's really about understanding, where you're going to invest, which streams and all that, and then for how long you need to do that for it to actually have a chance of working.
Yeah. And also buying cycles. So for example, just say you're a jewellers and you've just finished all your sales in December, and you then go, right, I'm going to start a marketing campaign and give it 6 months. Other than Valentine's Day, you're going to have a very quiet 6 months.
Yeah.
Because 90 to 95% of your sales will be in December. So actually all the marketing activities throughout that year are all geared for almost next year.
Yeah.
So that's really where you can have
it's
a true
about knowing your cycles,
return on investment.
Yeah. Apart from that, cycles don't always repeat.
Yeah, well,
and this is another argument.
Very contradicts ourselves, which is great.
No, but what I mean is that and that's what is the benefit of having a longer term campaign.
Yeah.
Because just because April of this year you had a gold rush and a windfall of money coming in doesn't mean that April next year will do exactly the same thing. And you might find that next year it's August, which we've had experience of. Yeah. But because you're doing that 12-month campaign, it means you're catching all bases, because you're not stopping. I mean, I did have a conversation with one client. We did a couple of years. They were very successful, and for a certain month of the year, that was when they were most successful. So they said, well, this is simple. So next year we'll just do it for that month.
Yeah, but then they don't understand why it came in. So what are the marketing red flags? What should people be saying? Right, okay, something isn't working, something isn't right. This is when I need to bring a marketing specialist in. What are those red flags, do you think?
It's not so much red flags, but I think there is a wealth of experience out there.
Yes.
And when we start businesses, we are good at something, but not everything.
Yeah.
So
usually one thing and rubbish at everything else. We just muddle through.
Back to the pillars of your business. So and this is self-reflective in so much as you need to know what you're good at, but also you even need to know even more what you're not very good at.
Yeah.
And then you need to fill them gaps, and they're the pillars of your business. And it doesn't matter whether they're employed or consultants or suppliers or wherever it is, but it's filling them gaps. And then that way it's much easier to manage that process of understanding where the pitfalls might be, because you're going to have people with experience advising you, look out for this, look out for that.
Yeah.
And you only have so many hours in the day. We're all limited by the same amount of time.
Yes.
And the art of leadership and success in business is delegation. So marketing is a great area you can delegate to people, and you can outsource it. Whereas not necessarily everywhere is as easy to do, but marketing advertising certainly is one of those responsibilities and tasks you can delegate to elsewhere.
Give it to the people that do it well, do it quick, do it.
And the internet never sleeps.
Yeah.
So you need people who are on this stuff all the time. So if you're out there getting business, we spoke about networking, who is looking at that screen and monitoring what's going on when you're not?
I suppose one tip would be just whenever you're, evaluating someone to work with, do your research. Just really do your research, your due diligence. Speak to people, speak to their clients.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Just find out if what they're actually saying is true.
Yeah.
Because in what we do, it's very data based, so you can prove what works, what doesn't, and the success you've had. So luckily we've got ambassadors for our brand. So literally when a client says, can I speak to some clients, we've got many who would be happy to have that conversation and say, look, we started here, we're now here.
That's a really key point, actually, because we have sort of business champions our clients, and we've had an open conversation with them about, if we want to get more business, are you okay for us to put people in touch with you so you can reinforce anything or ask any questions, and ask them honestly, tell them whatever they ask, tell them the answer, whatever it is. If you've got any reservations, blah, 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 please tell me first.
So I can kind of sort it out.
So at least we can do something about it. But, and then you build that little network of people that you can then say, well, look, if you don't believe me, or if you've got any reservations,
social proof.
Yeah, please speak to, and give them more than one. So that they know it's not just this is my best mate, he owns a company down the road and I've lined this up to.
The interesting thing is, because you do give all of those things, the chances are they're probably not going to check them out anyway. Sometimes they do. It's that social proof. We all adopt new customers, new brands, new ideas in different ways. And I do a whole thing about the theory of innovation, of diffusion of innovation. And we all sit in different areas where we take up. So there are early adopters, people who were always looking for the new, fresh thing. But there are also the majority of the people who want social proof, who will learn from their peers, who need to have proof that they're not going to be wasting their money. Yeah. So I think all of those are absolutely brilliant, and thank you so much for all of your insights. It's just been hugely, hugely impressive, and I always love the fact that I always learn something from the people that I have on these things. So coming back to our last questions, a little bit of fun. I want to find out who your brain candy hero is and why.
So for me, Sir Clive Woodward is someone I find a fascinating character. He primarily because of he was very focused on discipline and teamship when he was, coaching, and that's what led to a lot of his successes. But he also now uses a lot of that experience from his sporting career and sporting coaching in helping other businesses and stuff. Now I don't agree with everything he says, and why would you? But I just find it really when he analyses things or when he talks about stuff, I just find it really interesting and I want to listen because I think it's subjective and then it makes me want to question.
Yeah, I love that because you always need something to hit your head against. Yeah. What about you, Danny?
It'd be Tony Robbins and Simon Sinek.
Oh, see, Simon comes up all the time. So let's go for Tony. Why is Tony?
Well, I think one of the first ones was when I saw him in Shallow How years ago and understanding the power of psychology and influence, persuasion, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
And, I love Shallow How.
Yeah, it all sort of stemmed from there and really understanding that and how much it aligns to business, relationships, sales and so forth. So I find that very fascinating.
Brilliant. And the last question is, what's your most profound piece of wisdom that you've been given that you give to the people around you, your customers, people like that?
So for me, there's many snippets as we talked about earlier, but one thing I would say is if you don't know what your customer's thinking, ask them. And it sounds really simple and really obvious, and it is.
Yeah.
But we all, so many times, actually forget to speak to the client about what they're thinking. So we'll make assessments and assumptions. Again, pricing's a key one. Oh, well, they won't pay that much. Well, how do you know that? Have you spoken to them?
Yeah.
So, that's I would just say, if you don't know what someone is thinking, you have to ask them, and maybe more than once.
The simplest things are always the best. Danny, what about you?
For myself, there's many, but one of the ones I'll share today is opportunity dances with those on the dance floor. So the more you do, the more you put yourself out there, get involved in things, it often leads to new opportunities, and the amount of times it's led on to other things that have been great for myself and business, etc. is astonishing. So get out there, promote yourself, do things. It's I think in Britain we're a lot more reserved, whereas if you look at the Americans over the water, then obviously they're a lot more out there, and I'd recommend to have a little bit more confidence in the British nation yourselves.
Brilliant, lovely. Thank you so much for all your insights. Thank you for being true geeks in your field, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for listening and watching our Geek Chic, our podcast created for you because intelligent conversation never goes out of style. Your chosen place for business brain candy. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Please remember to give us a thumbs up, a follow, a like, a share, subscribe, all of those things. Tell all of your friends, comment, give us feedback, and we hope you've enjoyed our little production. It is brought to you in conjunction with Sales Geek Essex and DMB Films, the home for professional podcast filming. This is Lisa from Sales Geek, wishing you all wisdom and wellness. Until next time.